Welcome to MRII's Insights and Innovators podcast, where we talk to top market research professionals to get their inside stories about innovative and enduring best practices. Today's episode is sponsored by RTI Research. RTI Research is a market research company that turns data into meaning so you can communicate your insights simply and act on them effectively. Now, here's your host for today's episode.
Welcome to our podcast, Insights and Innovators. I'm Katie Gross, and we're diving into 5 lessons from an entrepreneur in market research. Joining me is Dan Coates, founder and CEO of YPulse and serial entrepreneur. So I'm going to open up, Dan. You mentioned that you're a serial entrepreneur. So to start with, can you tell us how many companies you founded or co-founded in the past?
Yeah, YPulse is the 5th company that I've founded or co-founded. Planet Feedback in 1999, which merged with Buzzmetrics and became Nielsen Buzzmetrics. A disastrous outside of the market research industry company called ePointments, which is basically ZocDocs, just way ahead of its time. SurveyU, Global Park USA, and now YPulse. And the one thing that I've learned along the way is stay in your lane. When I left the market research industry, things went really badly. The amount of things that I didn't know outside of the market research industry overwhelmed me.
Oh, I can imagine. People always say, obviously, I'm in a sales role predominantly, and people always say, you could sell anything. I'm like, I don't think I could sell very much else. It's not my experience. So how old were you when you founded your first business?
I was 29 years old. We raised $31 million in mid-1999. And it was game on. My family knew at the time that if they wanted to have dinner with me, they had to bring a pizza to the office and we'd eat at the boardroom, because I wasn't going to be leaving the office until well after midnight. It was we went from 0 to 60 people in under 6 months, and certainly it was an exciting time for sure.
Wow, that's so brave. At 29, I was working at a startup, but I'm not sure I would have wanted to have started one at that time.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
My parents were very entrepreneurial, and my father used to hassle me mercilessly. I mean, he would ask me every year how much money I made for the shareholders of whatever company I was working for, and then he would sort of tease me about how wasn't it great that I was making so many other people wealthy? But I would always have the same answer for him, which was, I'm learning, figuring it out. I'll be there soon. So I thought 29 was a pretty early start. He didn't agree.
Yeah. I love that, though. I love that it came from a family of entrepreneurs and that those were your Christmas dinner conversations.
Yeah, my parents were real estate developers, and I'm a researcher because my role within the family was to study all the demographic shifts and movements of populations, and then come up with advice as to where we should be building and what and where.
Oh, that's really awesome. That's really fun.
Yeah.
I think it's important that people have kind of side hustles. I have a few rental properties in New Jersey and here in North Carolina, and it's good to always have something outside to keep those kind of entrepreneurial spirits moving, not just in your day-to-day role.
Yeah, indeed.
So do you want to give the audience a bit of an intro to kind of your role today and more detail about YPulse?
Sure. So I'm co-founder and CEO of YPulse. We're a B2B information service provider and focused on youth. So we survey over 325,000 people aged 13 to 39 across 7 countries. And then we provide articles, reports, data dashboards, and an AI assistant to brands like Amazon, Apple, Google, Microsoft, Netflix, YouTube. And so my specific role is to chart the strategic path of the company and recruit the talent necessary to sort of execute on that strategy, and then ensure that the resources and funding required to succeed are in hand. And if there's anything I haven't done so well, it's that last part lately. But certainly it's been an interesting time for the market research industry in general, and for syndicated research in specific over the last couple of years.
Yeah, for sure. Actually, as I was prepping for our conversation today, I looked on your website and I really liked that you had the percentages that you spend your time on. It was you, your CPO, and it was really interesting to kind of see that that's the division of your kind of time. So let's get into those 5 lessons that you've learned.
Great.
And obviously, lesson number 1, I'm assuming, is identifying that market need. So every successful entrepreneur typically finds a gap or finds a problem that they themselves want to solve in the market. So how did you identify the need that led you to kind of starting up some of those businesses?
Yeah, in the case of YPulse, it was 2007, and surveying youth has always been this Gordian knot of the market research industry. We can sort of talk to them when they're in the household as children, and then they sort of disappear when they become teens, and then they reemerge when they form their own households. And so, as a researcher, there was always this blind spot. And if you recall, back in 2006, 2007, there was this thing called Facebook, and they were starting to really make some traction with college students. And we realized that social media was going to be this wonderful way to connect with young people that would allow us to spark those conversations and be able to um, untie this Gordian knot. Um, we started with college students because Facebook started with college students, but then quickly moved to college and high school students, and then students and non-students, and gradually over time started with the hardest problems, and then just kept solving for those hardest problems and expanding up from there.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. What kind of advice could you give to somebody for if they're trying to identify kind of a niche market or a missing gap today?
Yeah, I'd say pick a lane and just one, right? Own it completely. We owned the college student market completely until we expanded beyond the college student market. So once you've dominated that first niche, then you can think about expanding beyond that niche, but not until you've really covered the bases. And think about it, the reference customers that you can mention, the ability to sort of, get credibility and authority in a space by dominating it, even if it's tiny and even if it's small, but then expanding beyond it. And then whatever you do, don't spread yourself too thin. I see all together too often, people with lots of ambition, and they want to do this and they want to do that. They want to do everything. And you could do anything that you want, but you can't do everything that you want. So picking that lane, sticking to it, expanding beyond that lane once you own it fully and completely, I would say is the best advice that I could give somebody trying to tackle niches.
Yeah, that's so great to hear. Our chief operating officer always says your strategy is more so based on what you say no to than what you say
Yeah,
yes to, for
that's
sure.
that's another great one. Absolutely.
And speaking about people, and bringing kind of talented people into the business, obviously the second lesson I always hear from entrepreneurs is about building the right team, or
Mm-hmm.
else it kind of all lands on your shoulders. So how did you go about assembling the team? Kind of what qualities do you prioritize when you're recruiting?
Yeah. So I want to quote Antoine de Saint-Exupéry. He wrote Le Petit Prince. And this is posted on the walls at the office. This is our mantra, which is, if you want to build a ship, don't drum up the men to gather wood, divide the work, and give orders. Instead, teach them to yearn for the vast and endless sea. So as we've built our team, we're just interested in people that are really interested in youth, right? And they come to us. We don't have to go out and find them. They're passionate, they're engaged, they're empowered, and they care deeply about what it is that we're trying to achieve.
I love that. You need to send that to me.
Okay, well,
That's definitely something I want to add to kind of my roster of things to think about. Um, so that sounds like you've probably hired some really passionate, amazing people. So do you have a story that you can share with us around how having like the right team or the right person made a really
yeah,
crucial
yeah.
difference?
Listen, our entire team is passionate, right? They're motivated, they're empowered. I don't know if you've read the book Unmanaged, but I just try to stay out of their way and not
Yeah.
say stupid things or dictate, ridiculous things that make it harder for them to get their job done. Instead, I try to stay out of their way. And then every once in a while, somebody joins the team that's there for the short haul or for a limited reason, right? As opposed to this true deep passion for youth, and they stick out like a sore thumb and really don't last very long because they can't possibly keep up to a true believer. So the example that I'd like to give is that over 120 days, my small but mighty product team designed, prototyped, developed, beta tested, iterated on the beta feedback, and then launched an AI assistant. I give speeches now on how to come up with something as brilliant as we've come up with in less than 120 days, just because, if you're passionate, if you're empowered, if you're committed, amazing things can happen. And so I'm really proud of the work that they did. We achieved this earlier this year, and it's really set us on a whole new trajectory. And we're talking about four people. Four people have totally changed the trajectory of the YPulse organization and have defined and shaped our future.
I love that story. I was just talking about this yesterday, around and kind of to quote my own CEO, Matt, he always says, cities do not have statues of committees. They have statues of entrepreneurs and people that got the work done.
Yeah.
And I hear too often in our industry, we need to build out a committee with a framework and then gather the feedback and gather the data. Can we just go get it done?
Yeah. Yeah.
Love
Indeed.
that attitude.
Indeed.
So adapting, obviously, because lots change. You just mentioned AI. We mentioned kind of Facebook, and a lot can kind of change in our industry, and in the economy and so on. And the market research industry has definitely seen some significant changes over the years. So we'd love to kind of hear from you. How do you adapt to these changes? What lessons have you learned? Because obviously you mentioned earlier the importance of picking lane and staying with it, but how do you also kind of balance that with adapting, and pivoting as needed?
Yeah. I'd say, given that we live in the world of youth, the most important change that we've been dealing with over the course of our company's history is attention spans, right? Attention spans are declining. Young people are getting busier. They're achieving far more than you and I did when we were their age. They're kind of impressive and amazing and somewhat demoralizing to hear all the things that they're doing. So we strive to keep all of our interactions with young people to less than 10 minutes. And this is based on a lot of data that we've collected, and we publish every few years in Quirks. We'll publish the sort of what's the current state of attention amongst youth, and all the sample providers love that article because they love to send it to their clients when their clients are trying to roll out a 30-minute survey to somebody who's 13 years old. It's
Yep.
like, this is not going to work at all. So really, we've learned that 8 to 10 minute mark, largely they're taking surveys on a mobile device. It's got a limited screen. You've got a limited amount of goodwill that you can tap into with young people when it comes to survey research. And so, definitely would say that addressing attention span, keeping things short and sweet, keeping them engaging. We acquired a company back in 2013 called Thumb, which was a local social mobile app. And what we learned from that experience was 140 characters is about the most that you should have a question
Mhm.
take. They're never do we ever ask the question, thinking of the last time you were standing in a grocery store, how many of the following? That is the wrong way to talk to young
Yep.
people. You've got to be very direct. You've got to get the answer quickly, and you've got to get them on their way and back to the things that they really care about, like, I don't know, relationships and friends and family. And survey research, unfortunately, doesn't break the top 20 list of what they're concerned about. So we have to understand our place and really make sure that we're not overstaying our welcome.
Yeah, you're so right. We were just talking about this internally because to what extent do the following attributes acquire? It's like, that's not how people talk in their natural kind of day-to-day life.
Yeah,
But young people do want to give their feedback to brands. They do want large brands to listen to their needs and wants. So there's definitely this kind of survey research and giving feedback, and we need to kind of bridge the two for sure.
yeah, yeah, indeed, I agree.
Now, navigating entrepreneurship, I'm sure, is nice and easy, right?
Mhm.
So let's come on to lesson number 4, navigating challenges and failures. No entrepreneurial journey is, of course, without its challenges, setbacks, etc. So can you share maybe kind of a major challenge or failure that you faced in the past, and then more importantly, how you overcame it?
Yeah, we've got lots of failures. Some folks on my leadership team think that we should bat 1,000, but I've sort of come from a product mindset. And if you're batting 500, you're doing great, right? There's
Mhm.
going to be some awful dogs, but in 2022, we invested 6 figures into a spending tracker that fell short. We showed it to customers, and they immediately told us like what we had gotten wrong, right? And it was really humbling and demoralizing, and we had to scrap it practically immediately. But we learned a ton through the process. What we learned was that brands weren't interested in how much people spent; they were much more interested in what people bought, right?
Right.
And so when we launched the spending tracker, we were like, "This is great!" And they're spending this much here, and they're spending that much there. And we proudly demoed it to all of our customers, and they said, "Okay, great. What did they buy?" And we were like, "Oh, we don't know what they bought." They were like, "Well, that's all we really care about. We don't really care that they spent $100 at Lowe's. What we care about is what they bought when they spent $100 at Lowe's."
Yeah.
And at the time, the data didn't exist to give them what they wanted, and so we kind of went back to the drawing board. Now we know exactly how to structure our spending tracker in the future. And the second that we can collect or get access to data that does answer the question, what did you buy, not what did you spend? We'll be back at it again. I'm sure a lot of people in the leadership team will roll their eyes and think, not this again. But just like Edison said, every failure is an opportunity to learn and to take things in a new direction and eventually succeed.
Yeah, it's so true. And it's what I love about that story is it's you were going in the right direction. Like, definitely brands want to know about spend, but it was just that subtle difference of actually it's purchase, not spend. It's so
Yeah,
subtle, but so, so important. Um,
yeah.
I know it's really stressful to be an entrepreneur. I was just listening to Elon Musk from his younger years where he mentioned being an entrepreneur is like staring down an abyss and eating glass.
Yeah.
So that sounds a little
Oh, that's
stressful.
lovely. Yeah. I want to sign up for that, don't you?
Exactly, yep. But which part do you think is the most stressful part?
Yeah, when you think about stress, I think a lot about just the basics of the business, which over time, we've managed to master. But think about the sort of business basics of coming up with a compelling vision, talking to a few brave souls into joining a team that doesn't even have a product yet, talking a few even braver customers into giving a product that's never seen the light of day before a shot. That's definitely tough. Keeping your receivables ahead of your payables, worrying about your cash flow day to day, that's tough. But I have to admit, the toughest part of being an entrepreneur are all of the external shocks that we've had to the system. I've been an entrepreneur since 1999. So over the course of the last 25 years as an entrepreneur, what have we seen, right? We saw the dot-com meltdown. That was a lot of fun. I don't know if you were there, but I was.
I
It
was
was
at
it was
university, so I was watching it closely.
Oh yeah.
About to go into my career.
And then just after the bubble started to burst, we had 9/11. That was a bucket of cold water. The financial global
That was my
meltdown of
graduation year. Yep.
yeah, congratulations.
Yeah.
You've graduated. There's nothing for you to do here. We're still mopping up. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, and then think about the global financial
Yeah.
meltdown of 2008. I remember walking up Wall Street to go to the office every day and thinking like, this is it. Like the world's over. Like, what are we going to do next? Right.
Hmm.
Then, let's add to that a COVID pandemic in 2020. And then the last 2 years, the economic headwinds from, escalating interest rates in the face of, inflation running off the charts. I mean, geopolitical unrest, it seems like we can't kind of catch a break. And
Yeah.
so it's been an interesting time to be an entrepreneur. And I don't think we should anticipate that it's going to get any calmer, right? In fact, navigating your business through all of this, having conversations with customers. I'm good friends with Borg and Amy, the founders of Medallia, and
Hmm.
they had to
Yeah.
give a presentation to a hospitality company on September 12th, 2001, the day after 9/11. That was the start of their business. That was their first business presentation. I mean, that sounds a lot like the Elon Musk quote, to stand
Yeah.
in that room and try to pitch something when the whole world is just really focused on something else.
Yeah. Yeah. I can imagine. I was talking to one of my team members who I think had graduated in 2010, 2011, and had really only kind of rode some of those good times.
Yeah.
And like what you're going to learn in this is how to adapt, how to be resilient, things that I had to learn, and I was like lucky in 2008 as the kind of the world was crashing. I just got my foot into online market research where
Yeah.
companies had um been doing face-to-face, telephone. I was online. I was therefore cheaper. I was faster. I was more cost effective, etc. So I was in the right place at the right time, or chose to be in the right place at the right time potentially. And so you just have to learn kind of how to adapt. What are we building? How are we
Mhm.
navigating this? Not just let's wait till times get better because we don't know what's coming next, for
Yeah.
sure.
I have this saying with the team quite often, which is the tide goes out, but then it comes back in.
Yep.
And I've had the opposite problem. I've had team members that have only ever seen the tide go out. And I would tell them that,
Right.
that there's going to be a time when, selling's easy and customers do have budget and you kind of feel like you're pedaling a bicycle downhill. And they shake their heads and they look at me like, you sad, delusional man. The world doesn't work like that. It hadn't worked like that through that phase of their career, but the tide goes out and then it comes back in again, and you just have to be really artful about
Yeah.
about navigating it. And I think to the Elon Musk quote, you have to ask yourself, what are you doing it for, right? If you're
Yeah.
doing it for fame or fortune, good luck, right? You're going to
Yeah.
get your ass handed to you so many times that your ego is going to shrivel to the size of a raisin.
Yeah.
Um, but our purpose at YPulse is to help brands truly understand youth, and we do that by giving young people a voice to express their goals and values and beliefs. And then we
Yeah.
decode their attitudes and behaviors into valuable insights for brands to better connect and engage with young people. And so over the last, I counted yesterday, 6,437 days, I've begun and ended each day with that simple goal in mind, right? If you're doing it for selfish reasons,
Yeah.
you're going to suffer. But if you're doing it for the right reasons, even a bad day is still pretty decent.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I know right before this call we were talking about some of my previous roles, and when I had worked at Mintel, I believed so deeply in what we were selling because I had purchased it before joining Mintel that every meeting I went into, I knew it was going to help them. I wasn't trying to get a deal done or get a contract signed. I knew that what I had to offer was going to help them, and I feel just as passionately about Susie with that today. I know my tool is going to be helpful, and so it just makes every day much, much easier.
Doesn't it? Yeah.
Last lesson,
Okay.
sustaining growth and
Yep.
innovation. So, obviously, as businesses kind of grow, what role do you think innovation plays in that kind of growth strategy?
Yeah. I mean, whenever growth slows, we lean heavily into product development. We see downturns as blessings as we finally get a chance to run some experiments or test some hypotheses. We're coming off a couple of lean years where our customers in the media, entertainment, tech industries have pulled back on their spend. So during that time, we managed to move 500 million data points into Snowflake, where we can
Wow.
sort of, access them. And also then that gave us the ability to kind of create this AI assistant that leverages 10 years of
Mhm.
past youth insights and data. So that AI assistant that we developed in 120 days, again, when times were a little bit slow for us, has been really well received by our clients. And so as soon as their budgets are restored and as soon as things kind of get back to normal, as soon as the tide comes back in, they're going to know exactly how to make better decisions around young customers. They're not going to have any doubt as to how and who to go ask to make their day to day better.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I love that kind of like it's time to go experiment and
Yeah,
test and learn, because making one big bet and hoping it works is not
yeah,
the way.
yeah,
We've talked about some of the kind of challenges and eating glass, staring down an abyss, but I'd love to kind of finally ask you, what is the most kind of fun or rewarding thing about being an entrepreneur?
yeah. I would say that being an entrepreneur in the market research industry, is really great. I mean, our industry represents a thriving ecosystem with wonderful upward mobility, right? The great news is that the big fish eat the little ones, right?
Mhm.
And where else could sort of a farm boy from Saskatchewan, which is my origin story, create four companies that would be bought and integrated in some of the biggest companies in our industry. We've had one wave of great innovators after another for over a century now, right? George Gallup, Arthur Nielsen, J.D. Power, Alberta Burke. These were men and women whose passion and perseverance, have sparked our entire industry into existence. And it's never stopped, right? I was talking to Viv over at Question Pro earlier this week, and
Mhm.
man, that guy has got hustle, right? Like
Yeah,
he's impressive. Matt Britton, who you
yeah,
know very well, major hustle. That guy never stops, right?
never
Pat,
stops.
it never stops. Patrick Comer selling
Yeah,
Lucid to Cint for $1 billion, right?
yep,
Baller, right? You can't do better than that. Except Amy and Borga taking Medallia public and then selling to Thoma Bravo for $6.4 billion.
yeah,
Incredible, right? They left their cushy jobs at BCG to start a company around their kitchen table, right? Like they
yeah,
started that at their kitchen table, $6.4 billion. And
yeah.
then the award has to go to Ryan Smith, right? Who
Yes.
who then he basically built up Qualtrics, sold it to SAP for eight billion dollars, and then spun it out and sold it again, right, to
Yeah,
Silver Lake and CPP for $12.5 billion. That's savage, right? I mean,
yeah,
so these people are just only the latest wave of innovators, right? They've reshaped our 100-year-old industry in the last 5 years. These are all things that have happened in just 5 years' time. So, somewhere
yeah.
this past spring, the kids graduated from MIT or Stanford, or Ohio State or Oberlin College that's going to make these last 5 years look like peanuts, right?
Yeah.
So while I feel super lucky to have spent the last 30 years in this industry, I envy the next generation. They'll take what we've achieved and they'll multiply it by 1,000. So
Yeah.
I kind of feel like the innovation has never stopped. It's going to continue long after we're gone. And I think our industry does a really, really good job of capturing new technologies and new techniques and these big behemoths that used to be. I mean, think of how big Merritt's was at one point in time until
Yeah.
Medallia came along. I mean, it's like living in Manhattan.
Yeah.
You just when you think you know what a street
Yeah.
looks like, two buildings go down and new buildings pop up. And so I see this constant evolution of the industry. It's really exciting.
Dan, that's so inspiring. And thank you for reminding me of that because I've had the pleasure of working for a number of those people. I've hiked with Patrick Comer, having worked at St. Obviously, I work for Matt Britton now. But even someone like Steve Schlesinger, I was at an Insights Association event, and there was someone on stage saying that she remembers when Steve was a child because she was doing focus groups in his mum's house because his mum had started that business and he took it
Yeah,
on. Now he's obviously passing it on. We really do have such an amazing industry of dedicated, passionate hustlers, as you kind of mentioned there. And thank you for inspiring me, reminding me of all those names for sure.
excellent.
I hope,
I hope the listeners that listen think to themselves, what am I going to do tomorrow? My biggest dream is that the people on my team, think to themselves, okay, well, Dan, that was all right, but I can do better, and I'd love to see them do it. I'd love to
yeah,
to be in a position to invest in their future reimagining of our industry.
absolutely. And continue to reimagine again and grow and do better. I love it. Thank you so much, Dan, for joining me. This has been awesome. I hope the audience has taken a lot of takeaways that they can now apply to their roles. Again, ask themselves that questions. What are you doing tomorrow? What are you starting today as well? Thank you, Dan, so much.
Thanks for joining MRII's Insights and Innovators podcast. Be sure to subscribe and listen to all of our podcast episodes and visit us at mrii.org for more insights for market research professionals.